What's up, everybody? F1 Card Strategy Show. Paul Hickey here with NoOffSeason.com. Rob, not Bob Misora, in the house from Bob's Card Market and the Card Treasury. We're coming in hot. He and I just joined the stream, or I just joined the stream right at showtime. And he said this should be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting.
Very interesting.
We're winging it. This is the ultimate form of winging it.
It's the ultimate form of winging it. We're just having fun on the F1 Card Strategy Show. Go to nooffseason.com and get a free 30-day trial of our premium membership there. Would love to know what you guys think, and check out bobscardmarket.com to join the Discord. More on that later, but today, so we had our audience members write in after our last F1 Card Strategy Show and say, hey, love the show, but would love it if you could break down some prospecting. And so I did a little bit of research. I don't know if you did.
Oh, a little bit is the right word. That's the right way to phrase it.
So I have three guys, like 3.5 guys to talk about. I have half of a guy because we already know who he is. We've already talked about him a lot, but I have 3 guys to talk about on my list. Rob, what are you seeing in the F2? So just to clarify, like F1 card prospecting, what does that mean? So
right.
Basically, to me, it means since 2020, the inaugural release of the Topps Chrome and Sapphires, right? They've included F2 drivers starting in that release. And so then they did it again in 2021. They did it again in 2022. So for the 3 years that we've had the Topps Chrome releases of the F1 product, there's been F2 drivers in there. So for those of us who are familiar with baseball prospecting, which I think most of us are, it's a similar situation where you've got essentially a certain amount of spots. They're called seats in F1. For those of you who don't know, many of you listening and watching already know that. There's only a certain amount of seats. There's 2 seats per team, and there's 10 teams. So there's 20 drivers in F1. And then F2 is a logical place where when a new driver, when a team needs a new driver, one logical place is F2, but it's not the only place, right?
No, it's not.
So it's like there's IndyCar, there's NASCAR, there's all sorts of go-karting. There's stuff that I don't know about because I'm not a huge racing guy. So
there's also the reserve drivers.
There's the reserve drivers, right? So does each team have one reserve driver? Is that right? Just one?
Not even every. I was trying to do some research and figure all this out, and my head was spinning. And not even every team has a reserve driver.
Okay.
So it's. I think it's a financial thing if they want to afford to have a reserve driver. Because I was like, who's the reserve driver for Williams? And like, no one came up. Like Google didn't have an answer for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. So like in baseball, it's really as simple as like low A, high A, double A, triple A majors, but with some Arizona Fall League and some complex league and other things mixed in. So, but it's pretty much easy to follow. Like, okay, so-and-so is the number 2 prospect in the blah, blah, blah organization, and they're going to project out this way in the future. And by the way, here's where they were drafted, and here's what their signing bonus was. And so you can put all those factors together to invest. Whereas in F1 prospecting, I think there's a couple different struggles for the sports card investor. I think we should lay this out first, right, Rob?
Yes, it's very important. The struggles are real.
The struggles are real.
Just before you get into that, about the struggles, like in general, we're learning F1, and we talked about this on the previous podcast. Is it's new. The card market is new, and from 2020 till now, and so we don't have a lot of data, and so we're trying to go off of what we have and compare that to other scenarios, whether it's baseball or whatever. So that alone is a struggle.
Yeah, that's true. There's not as big of a sample size of data to go on. And I think I'll probably keep referring to baseball consistently because in baseball, you have the call up spike that we talk a lot about. on the other shows. And in F1, we've seen some hype around some news, but it doesn't always necessarily result in a spike in prices. And we'll talk more about that later. Another sort of tricky thing is, we hit on this a minute ago. You don't really know. You know that I think around July, August, there's a lot of rumors around, and I think in August, right? We talked about this in the last episode. That's where a lot of the news comes out about who's going to have what seats in the previous season, even with a couple months to go in the current season. So that's different. I think that's a time frame to keep I think now is a time frame to have this show. That's why we wanted to do it like at the end of May, because we're still a few months ahead of when maybe some news would drive prices. So I think that's why we're doing the show today, is like, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think that the selling point for what could happen would actually be, one of them could be in August-ish when the news comes out.
Yeah, they call it the silly season, where summer break, when they take them, I think it's like 4 to 6 weeks off, but that is when they're going to pretty much decide who's going to have the seats for 2024. And yeah, they still have 4 or 5 months left of the season, but they need time to, do simulators, get the new cars are being built for 2024. So they have to like get fitted for that, all that stuff. And so that's when they kind of iron all that out. But yeah, it's very, the little research. I said I did research, I guess more than a little, but I would say I have little answers from the research.
Yeah.
So, but the spike, just like baseball, is the call up, is the announcement of this particular driver is going to have this seat, and that is the spike. Now there are other opportunities that I was looking at your boy Piastri, because I think he's one of the examples that we have where he had a card, he was an F2, there was more drama around his call up, if you will, than normal, but that was the spike. But I don't know if you're able to, what direction you want to go, if you want to pull that up. But on market movers, I noticed something pretty interesting on there.
Yeah, I think we can go in that direction, because I think the final point that I want to make is that pay attention. If you're gonna make prospecting plays in F1, or from F2 to F1 specifically, now would be the time to start trying to buy the cards on the cheap and do whatever you need to do to them, have them graded, whatever, to get them back to sell. Hopefully what you think will happen in August, and then sell them in August. Because what I know, I mean, I don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but I just don't think that necessarily their debut is going to drive. Whereas in the MLB, it's like the call up means that there's a debut. So it's kind of like call up debut hype, where like in F1, it's like their call up is in August, really, but then their debut is going to be like in the next calendar year of like 6 months later, or 5 to 6 months later, in like January, February. So their debut, by then they suck, because they're a first time F1 driver in theory, one of the lower tier cars. I mean, because unless like Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull pulls up somebody out of the blue, which like typically they're pulling out, like typically they have their number one driver, and then their number two driver is going to be sort of a veteran of sorts to support their number one driver. It's not the same where like Ellie De La Cruz gets called up and plays third base and maybe he's going to hit a couple home runs. It's like, it's just where it all happens in that same week. So, and then the other point real quick is, and then we can get into what you said about Piastri. So there's also like rumors about drivers coming from other places. So it's not as simple as like, whereas Piastri fit what I call sort of the formula. He like checked all the boxes for me as a prospect last year. It was like, the first thing was he's got an F2 cards, and he's the guy in the 2021 set. So it was kind of like, I felt like I kind of missed out on 2020. So then I was like, what can I do to not miss out on 2021? Narrow the focus to Piastri, and I went hard all in on Piastri, and then it just didn't play out the way that I wanted. I think because, to your point, we're all sort of still learning, and I'm certainly still learning like what the pattern recognition needs to be in order
So
to
did you try to sell Piastri?
What I did was I bought in at the wrong time. I bought in like
Okay.
that's the number one mistake
Yeah.
of everything in sports card investing. Is number one mistake is buying in at the wrong time. So I bought in around like when the release hype happened. Like the release hype happened. So the prices were inflated because like his first cards were hitting the market, and more people than I thought already knew who he was. So
February 2022 was pretty much when you were buying them, right when the product came out.
I would say yes, right after that, like not like in the release month, but shortly thereafter, like March, April. I think March, April 2022 is when I bought most of my Piastri cards, and they were still like inflated because I think more, like I said, I underestimated the amount of people who would be making those plays. Like people, and it's not like I spent a whole ton of money. It's just that it doesn't matter the dollar amount that you spend. It's the fact that when you buy at the wrong time, you're eliminating your profit off the bat. Kind of. So that was my number one mistake. And then it was sort of like, I'm going to hold until my second mistake was holding until his debut,
Yeah.
which is what I said a minute ago. So if I would have sold him in August around the McLaren drama, I would have still taken a loss, but I wouldn't have taken as big of a loss. So let me give you an example on a card, right? So let's say I'm $200 into a refractor PSA 10. Probably not that much. Probably more like, say I'm $90 to $100 into a refractor PSA 10. That would be realistic in March, April of 2022, because the grading fee was still $30. So it's like $60, $70 card, $30 grading fee. You're about $100 into it, and you get and I got a PSA 10. So PSA 10, just base refractor, Future Stars, F2 card. Could have sold that for probably around $80, $70 or $80 in August, around the hype, after the news, rather, after it had dipped to like 30 or 50, and then it went back up around that time. I think I'm pretty correct on this. But then I sold it for like 30 in February. So it went back down to 30, and even though that's not like, I had bigger cards of his. That was kind of the lowest tier card I had of his, but they all kind of followed that pattern. Like the other one that I can give you an example on is, I was probably $900 into a refractor auto PSA 8. So I didn't get the grade I wanted. That sucks. That's part of it. That's actually probably the biggest part of it. If I would have got a 10 on that, I probably wouldn't have lost a whole lot of money. It probably would have broke even. But even still, you're not trying to break even, you're trying to profit. So PSA 8, I'm about $950 to $1,000 into a refractor out of, I think, $499 auto PSA 8. Ended up selling it for $300, but could have sold it for a long period of time for $500 or $600, and just thought, well, he's going to come out. I thought when he debuts, and then after he starts driving well, surely it's going to go up. Well, not knowing enough about F1 is also a problem in that, like I said a minute ago, it's not that they're not going to do well when they first start off in F1. That's part of it.
I can direct you on market movers, because I think Piastri it's one sample size, it's one person, one driver, but I think the path in which his values took I think it's the answer. If I'm going to declare like this is the answer of F1, F2 prospecting, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to go down with the ship, but
do it.
We'll see what happens. So if you go to charts,
I'm trying to load it it's slow to load. Let me see. Market movers. Okay, we're good now. Market movers, if you want to get your first month for only $1, use the promo code no off season. I'm just going to go ahead and do this on the fly. So for those of you who aren't familiar with market movers and or how it works, get a little on the fly preview here. So go to movements over on the left, and then you want me to go to charts?
Yeah.
Charts? Okay.
And then do Piastri and the player.
Okay.
Set, just do this 2021. Nope. Yep. Do base, variation, base. And go down and pick the raw card. And the reason I do raw is because that was you don't get the PSA data until it's gone to PSA and come back, and there's a lot of time there. So go to raw and then chart it. Hit chart there, yep. Scroll up, and then do all data.
All right.
So your chart looks different than mine. Maybe you pick something different, but
okay.
Anyways, it's a similar. I think it's a similar thing. So this, you can see the far left is when the release, right?
Yep.
And that's when you bought, and it kind of fluctuated a little bit, went down a little bit, and so when it went down is, I think right now, end of May, that little dip. So that's why we're saying like now is probably a good time to, if you're going to speculate, is to buy. And then you see August of 2021, September, August, that is when that big
of 2022.
22, sorry.
Yep.
So that's when the announcement happened, right? So
Yep.
that is probably is one of the peaks of the life cycle of an F1 card. But then look between that and that other peak, which is the debut, right when the F1 season is starting. Like, look at how far down the cards went. Like in October, December, November. So my theory and what I'm declaring now is like a lot of sports during that time, actually, like baseball and basketball, even, like that's a good time to buy F1 cards. And if you're going to prospect on them, I would do it then, because you actually know who's going to be in the seats. If you buy cards now in preparation for the August peak, you're going to gamble and you're going to lose because you don't know who's going to get the seats.
Mm-hmm.
But you can wait till you see who gets the seats, wait until November, December, buy their cards, then sell them right before the season starts. As that hype builds up, definitely sell them before they start driving, because they're young and they're going to drive bad.
Yeah.
Like, and then be done with it.
That's right. Okay. So I love what you're saying, and it's totally different than what I said a minute ago. So I'm glad we're clarifying this for the audience. So,
and both can work. Like, you can buy cards now in preparation for the August hype, but I think there's more risk there because you don't know who's going to get the seats.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just waited till August, saw Piastri got the McLaren seat, and then in November bought some cards and then sold them in February, you would have been golden.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So now Rob already gave this disclaimer, but I needed to give it again. Like this right here is one sale, right? So while it looks on a chart like, wow, that's closer, like that is around his debut kind of a thing, or shortly thereafter debut. It is only one sale. So you do have to look at more like what Rob was saying. So this is 4 sales here, 3 sales, 7 sales on August 28th. That's like a couple weeks after the hype. That's like a couple weeks after the news, like the McLaren drama and all that. Yeah. $11. But again, you would have broken even basically just on this raw comparison. Whereas what Rob is saying is like December, 99 cents, 99 cents, like 79 cents. I think I saw $1.50. And then now you're like, you're not that much into a card, and now you're profiting.
Yeah, these are raw. These are raw too, and there might be at that point in October to December, there's probably going to be some more PSA stuff out because cards have had time to go there and come back. But
yeah, so the other thing is like, I want to stay here because let's chart like a few of his cards out of the same set. So that type correctly here.
Just go to the player and then it'll filter it to you.
There we go. Okay, so now let's just chart like, I guess, the PSA 10 of it.
That's a refractor, but
yeah, good call. That's the one I had. So let's do that just because I want to do the one I had to see if I totally biffed or it pattern. Now we could do the base PSA 10, I guess. There's not that many of them, but I want to do also one auto. What would be a good one? Or you know, like a.
Did he have an auto?
He did. He had. I don't know if Market Movers will have the autos in here. They should. Yeah, he had several autos actually. Here, let's just show more cards. Sorry if you guys are listening and yelling at us, frustrated that we're looking this up on the show, but it's fine. It's valuable. This is valuable information. We're gonna bring it all home for you. So, Chad Gill and Oh My Shoes in the chat. Good to see you guys. I think this kind of pattern recognition can apply to other sports. I think. I can't find an auto in here, so let's just do like the out of 399. I know that's a popular one, right? In the F1 sets, the out of 399 purple refractor. So let's check and pick maybe. PSA 10's only pop 32. So let's do raw on that too, because then I think we'll probably get more. So here's 3 cards. We'll do all data. So now we're in a situation where, again, like, so the out of 399 sold for around over $200 upon initial release, started to go down. Now we're into August, sold for 175. So again, that's a loss from where you would have bought it for, and or a break even. So that purple refractor is kind of following the Piastri track that I spoke about a minute ago.
Yeah.
And now we're in a situation where there's going to be less sales because it's a purple refractor out of 399. There's just less of them. But now it's selling for around, like, most recent sale is $40. So you would have taken a $180 bath basically. And that's kind of what I did on like pretty much all of my Piastri cards, is like the trajectory of those cards. Now the refractor. So refractor, yeah. So this is where I said I sold mine. But I sold mine around like 2 sales for $65. All right, that was not me. I wish that was me, but 3 sales for 52. I sold mine for 30. You can see the sales for 30 are really more. I think this is maybe, no, I definitely didn't wait too long. I don't have patience to wait too long. Anyway, this must have been me right here, but I lost on it. So I think Rob's declaration, the reason I wanted to chart these 3 cards, the punchline is not to annoy the audience. It's to take Rob's point and just hammer it home even more. I think you're right, but I think it depends on the card. So I think there's always going to be that element of like making sure that you're selecting the right card. And I think because we have such a sample size of data on F1, such a small sample size of data on F1, if you're taking a card with a shorter print run, like a out of 399 or like an auto, then you're limiting your sample size even more. So in theory, you're sort of limiting your liquidity, I guess. So I guess it would make sense that a regular base raw card where you have like more of a sample size of data and thus more sales, more liquidity, would follow a pattern that would make more sense to be like where you could buy lower in December buying at a low point and then putting yourself in a position to basically sell at any point in the future where something may happen, like a debut, like a good race, like, a top 5 finishing in the podium, whatever. Those would be the kinds of things that I think still would help the value of an F1 card. What I like about the time window is it also fit basketball card people, baseball card people, and football card people will all tell you that time period in December is also the best time to buy those sports too.
Right.
So what do you think about just the fact that okay, the chart does seem to follow the pattern that I talked about in terms of losing on a guy like Piastri, but your card example, I think, kind of follows a different pattern. What do you kind of make of that?
Yeah, and we should say this as much as possible because it's an important piece to drive home. Is it's one driver. Like we don't have a lot of data that a person has a card, has been an F2, gotten called up. I can't stop saying that. Had an announcement that he's going to have a seat, and then is driving right now, and not driving well. So I think over the course of time, we're going to see this pattern play out, and we're going to be able to figure out when the best time to purchase these cards. And another idea while you're going through that is one of Chad's specials is wait until August. And they declare who's going to be driving where, and then pick a guy that's new, buy a bunch of his bases or his refractors or something lower, like raw, in bulk, and in November, December, save enough of them to resell right before the season starts, or save enough of them to sell when the season starts, but then hold back some that are gradable, so that if he does blow up and drives well for, shot in the dark or has a few good races, you could possibly grade them and increase your profit, but plan on making your money back at least that preseason hype when they're about to start racing.
Yeah. So let's go into the top 3 guys, or I hesitate to say like top 3 guys because I don't even know if I believe that I would buy these guys. And again, we're sort of underscoring the point. I think the overall point of this show is that it's like figuring out how to make money on F2 to F1 prospecting, because let's just sort of get to that punchline. Like, to me, even though it's tricky that we don't know where these drivers could come from and get these seats, and they do regurgitate drivers too a lot. Like, it's like an NFL head coaching carousel, and you see the same name in a different seat, just like you see like the offensive coordinator going to the head coach, back to the offensive coordinator, back to the head coach. Like, it's going to do that, and it's going to be frustrating because you might have bought a guy thinking he was going to get a seat and then it doesn't happen. But that's why another reason why I like what Rob said is like, buy in December when you know that he has the seat. But let's weed out everything except F2 just for the sake of this discussion, because it's like, so let's go into F2 drivers that we know about, because we know some things from them, and we know that there's actually is a path from F2 to F1. It's happened throughout history, and it happened with Piastri and several others before him. So, and Logan Sargent too, I believe. Logan Sargent was current F1 driver, moved up from F2, correct? So, my guys are in F2 right now. The 3 guys that I wanted to talk about. Where are you? Do you have any guys anywhere other than F2?
I got some names. I wouldn't declare them my guys, but I got some names.
Yeah, we're very much a disclaimer show.
It is. We do not want to put our names on anything.
The F2 to F1 disclaimer card strategy show.
I'm pulling up Logan Sargent because I wanted that. You made me think of him.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna launch into what I'm gonna talk about here. So one of my guys is Theo Porcher, or Theo Porcher.
He's one I had to.
So I might get some of the details off here, but I believe he's leading F2 right now.
Yep.
And he probably has the clearest path to an F1 seat out of anyone in F2. And you can look him up, you can Google him, you can see all the stuff that I'm seeing, but essentially there's a way that he could get an F1 seat for 2024. There's probably multiple ways. And there's articles written about it by, very smart people who cover F1 and F2. As it relates to his cards, if we chart out his 2021, so he's in the same release as Piastri. His 2021 base raw and base PSA 10 are super cheap right now. So you can, but the question I think is like, if we follow the same data that we saw from I like this comparison where we're going to go because it's the same release. And Piastri's cards sold for, we saw him get as low as 99 cents. Well, Theo right now, like the last sale and averaging all of his last sales are closer to $4 than $1. So even though we're talking pennies here, it actually does matter because every dollar at this level is going to matter to whether or not you make a profit. And so I would echo Rob's thoughts of like, don't buy him now. We don't know if he's going to have a seat. So we don't know if you're ever going to be able to, like, you're taking a guy who's like, we don't know if he's ever going to be in F1. He could. To, if he gets to F1, then in August, then we kind of know that there's going to be this pocket based on the Piastri data that it could go, this $4 card could go down to 99 cents. That's actually a big deal when you think about it, percentage wise. And that is PSA 10 right now, probably only a pop 16 because not that many people sent him in to get graded, is only selling for around $20. You're not going to profit if you try to like buy, grade, and flip that right now. That's just not a play. So, but knowing that if you do buy in December, you know that he's been called up, and then you know that you could send in the ones that look good to be graded to potentially get them back, not maybe for his debut, but at least during the beginning months of his F1 career. And then you could sell PSA 10s for a profit or just sell raw for a profit upon debut if you buy in bulk. So that could be a play. Like there's a lot of what ifs there, but I think if you follow this, you could execute that strategy and make money on Porcher. If it all depends on if he gets a seat though. But you'd rather not buy him. You'd rather like not buy him and have him not get a seat than buy him and have him not get a seat.
Right. And the interesting part about F1 cards in general is that, like you said, pop 16, and that's probably, aside from Lewis Hamilton and Max and some of the big stars, the pops are going to be low across the board. One is that, in the past, especially 2020, they were very hard to gem. But the pops are going to be low, so you can kind of control the market a little bit just with a few cards. So like I just typed in 2021 Chrome Theo PSA 10, and 21 listings came up. There's Theo John, a basketball player, so I didn't filter him out. But like the lowest price is a Sapphire PSA 10 for $50.
Is it like a buy it now or best offer?
Yeah, I just went to buy it nows. But that just shows you there's at least less than 21 total PSA 10s of all parallels, everything.
So I actually love that you said Sapphire because, again, pulling another thing from baseball, I was doing some analysis around like, are there any baseball cards to buy right now? And trying to narrow my focus down, trying to figure out, I don't see Sapphire in here in Market Movers. So maybe it's not in here. Anyway, I like that you said Sapphire, because even if it's not in Market Movers, you could look it up and find them on your own. But I was looking at like Jackson Churio, for example, as a baseball player that I was doing some research around, and Ellie De La Cruz before that several months ago. And they're kind of following this pattern of like, they're following this pattern of like, if you go one step above their base chrome, it has higher upside, but still kind of carries the same floor. And so in other words, like it's the same level of risk, but with higher reward. And so I believe that like, that's kind of what the Sapphire edition does. Like the base Sapphire edition, I think kind of gives the ability to have the same, like a similar risk level, but with a higher ceiling across the board. And so because you said that you saw a listing, it made me think maybe instead of buying the base in December, also look at what the Sapphire prices are, and compare and contrast the two. Because if you can get the Sapphire for not that much more than the regular base, then the Sapphire PSA 10 should sell for significantly higher than the Chrome based PSA 10. Good morning to Eric Stefano. Good to see you in the comments, my man. So feel free to drop any questions in here. But what we're talking about today, if you're just joining us, is how the heck to figure out if there's any opportunity at all in F2 to F1 card prospecting.
Who knows? I know you got two other guys, but yeah, Theo was one of my guys, and to look at. And one thing I also looked at is you mentioned a path to getting a seat, and I think that's pretty important. So I looked at all the F1 drivers' contracts to see which ones were going to be up this year. So you got Hamilton and Russell are both up in Mercedes. So I mean, I don't really see any of them making any moves. There's actually some rumors going around that that Hamilton's talking to Ferrari, which, I mean, geez, I don't even know. That would be crazy. But Alfa Romeo, Joe Granew's up, and that's Theo's path right there, because he's the team he's racing for in F2 is affiliated with. Like I was trying to do this research on the F2 teams, and if they're actually affiliated, like the AAA, AA team, with the F1, and like some are, some aren't. It's so confusing, and then
and some of them are all like, some of them are all incestuous with each other, and
right. And some of the teams have like a junior academy that like they bring on drivers that are like 10 years old and like raise them through this, like all karting and all the different levels of racing. So I was trying to see which ones were part of which academy, and it's just, if you want to go build a chart or Excel file, then go for it. But good luck. So that's Theo's path right there. Is, I think his best path is Joe Graneu. He hasn't really performed that well with Alfa Romeo since he's been there, and his contract is up. But I think two big ones is AlphaTauri, both of their seats, Yuki and De Vries, who's brand new, signed a 1-year deal, are both up. And Red Bull AlphaTauri has a good junior academy, and in F2 there's like 6 drivers that are part of that like academy. So that I think you could see some move. There's a possible path for someone there, and we can talk about some more drivers as well. But
yeah, for sure. So if you want to speculate and you really wanted to buy now, it's not a bad time to buy. It just doesn't appear to be as good of a time to buy as December based on the data. So we do have some, while we are still all learning, we do have like clear takeaways from this episode, like buying, like we have a narrow focus around guys. First of all, there's not that many guys. So that's a positive. Secondly, we do have a time frame. We have a time frame where we know things happen. And that's the other formula to this, part of the formula. And we have a time when we know it's a good time to buy and sell. So actually we do have like a really good framework. I think what we don't know yet is exactly what your reward would be, because we don't have there's not that many years of this happening. So we can't really say, hey, you know, it looks like if you buy this card and have it graded, you know, this is what your potential reward could be. This is what your potential loss could be if it doesn't get the grade that you want or whatever. And even like flipping raw, we don't know, like we don't have enough sample size of data, but we do have like everything else, which actually is kind of a big piece of the puzzle. So I'll go through my other guys and just another disclaimer. This is the disclaimer show is like, I don't know anything about this guy that I'm about to talk about other than what I looked up on the internet in preparation for this show. But I did find a young driver who is only 18 years old and who has won a race in F2 this year named Ollie Behrman. And he does have a card.
We're going to have the same three guys, aren't we?
We might. So I'll let you do the last guy, and then
it's going to be your third guy.
Your thunder on all three guys. But it's good that, I mean, it's good that we're aligned on who could be the guy. But like, so this dude has like, on the plus side, he's 18 years old. He's won a race. There's a little bit of hype around him in the F2 circuit. He seems to have like a Instagram following, and he seems to be on a Ferrari track, if I'm not mistaken, which those are all positive things for potential value. What's kind of a negative right now is that he only appears to have this Tops Now card, which I guess you could argue maybe that's not a negative, because when somebody only has one card and it's as clearly his first card, that's the card you go after. So until another card knocks it off its pedestal, which I'm sure will happen, I'm sure he'll be featured in the, I guess, the 2023 release that will come out in 2024. Anyway, that's him.
So I had to say, I had him on my list too, and
that's him.
Funny enough,
about him.
Yeah, funny enough, I noticed it was the Tops Now card, and it kind of got me thinking, like, this is kind of similar to your SI for Kids play, in that Tops Now could be like the first opportunity to get these F2 drivers, and maybe it's worth keeping an eye on them. They do Tops Now cards for the F1, but I think when there's a big moment in F2 like this one, it might be a good play just to pick up a handful or something. I think they're $10 a piece. This person obviously has like a bulk deal or something, selling them for $9, but and hold it on to them and see what happens, because it could be a scenario where, and the print runs are low. Like I think this one's like 1,600 or something like that.
Yeah, it could be a play here. Like here's this auction right here is
like DeVries' only card, I think, is his first card was a Tops Now card. I think he might have some other cards, but
you know, I didn't go deep enough into this to see like what does Piastri's Tops Now card sell for and all of that. But that could be another thing that you all in the audience could do, is like, before jumping into the Ollie Behrman stuff on Tops Now, go check and see what Piastri's, because I think Piastri's first cards were Tops Now as well. Go see if they're selling for anything. But like, it could be a play. I mean, look, if you're spending less than $10 to get a card shipped to your home, then there is always an opportunity to sell that card for more than $10 at a moment in the future. The problem with this entire discussion is that we don't know if there ever will be a moment for any of these guys, whereas like in baseball, we know there's going to be a moment.
Right.
So, but yeah, anything else to add on Ollie? And if not, you just go to your third guy. So maybe we have a different one.
I doubt it. It's going to be the same one.
Okay.
The third guy I had was Ayuma Iwasa.
I have no clue who that is. So we have different third guys. So tell us about him.
So he's part of the Red Bull AlphaTauri family. He is won a race, I believe, or maybe he hasn't won a race. No, yeah, sorry, he won Melbourne. So he's third currently in the standings for F2. But is, from what I read and research, a really good driver and has performed really well, obviously based on the standings. and part of the Red Bull AlphaTauri. And I just was thinking through Yuki Tsunoda's contract being up and the possibility that I think they're both Japanese, make not like a swap, but replace a Japanese driver with another Japanese driver. And if you think about because part of another angle we haven't really talked about is the popularity of the drivers, and do they bring money with them? Do they bring sponsorships with them? And that's why Ricardo's around, because he's like the face of F1 after Drive to Survive, and people love him. He's got a good personality. Like, he brings in fans and money. And that's why he's like always kind of like hanging around, and he's a reserve driver now and stuff. And
Yeah.
But just another angle there. And I think he was the one I had as my third driver on the list.
I did notice that, like, so you're right. He has won a race this year. Theo's number one in the standings, but the other two guys that we mentioned have each won races. And I did notice that, like, Theo's refractor raw is up as well. So there do appear to be some like single sale moments during the F2 season where you can actually sell F2 cards for a profit, like if these guys win a race. So that's not like an F1 card strategy play as much as it is like a trying to play the market of the F2 circuit, which is like maybe it's a thing. Probably not fully flushed out yet, but it looks like it could happen. And something interesting to think through. Probably wouldn't spend too much time on it though. My third guy is a little bit more of a storyline situation, which I'm a big fan of. For those of you who've listened to our content for a long time, it's Enzo Fittipaldi. So Enzo Fittipaldi is part of the bloodline of the Fittipaldi racers, Emerson Fittipaldi. I think his dad and his grandfather, and probably others that I don't know about because I don't really follow racing that closely, have raced, I think, not only in F1, but in like IndyCar and other places. And so, but it's a name like Fittipaldi, I think, is like a household name, even for people that don't follow racing at all. And so I think that will play a factor. Now, he's like not really near the top of the F2 standings. He's already 21 years old, which is like super young, but also like old compared to like some of these other guys. But he also like apparently crashed in 2021 and had to have brain surgery. And
oh, really? I didn't know that.
Like minor brain surgery to like reduce swelling, but it was like an ordeal. And so now that's like also part of his story. So if he ever does get an F1 seat, or if there's like legit rumors about him getting an F1 seat, and it could be maybe for some of the reasons that you just mentioned, Rob, about like name recognition and bringing money in. I mean, who knows, right? It's a far-fetched play where a lot of dominoes have to fall into place, but Enzo Fittipaldi would be my third guy for the reason of like the name recognition, the fact that he has legit F2 cards out of the most recent set 2022 that are his first cards, his first autos, his first serial numbered autos, first everything basically. Now I don't think he had any tops now or anything. I think actually, because I did do research on him last year and he did not have any cards. There was literally like a business card that he had signed in person, and that was it. So not that he's like a top tier prospect or anything, but his cards do sell. I think for the reasons that we've already talked about, like just the whole prospecting angle, name recognition, that kind of thing. By no means is he like dominant as a driver, but he's in the mix in F2. He's kind of like average and has the name recognition, and he has the cards. So he's my third guy.
His brother is the reserve driver for Haas.
Okay.
And his brother's 26. So I feel like I'm starting to get the feeling that the reserve drivers are like the baseball players that are like 28 years old and still in AAA type of thing, where they're good enough to like provide value as, you know, driving the simulators and being there just in case, but not someone you're gonna invest money in and want to grow. Because it's like Felipe Drugovich is one that I think he won. Did he win last year? We have to look that up.
I think so.
But so he's good,
I
right?
think it was him and Theo ended up
Yeah.
finishing second, and I think Drugovich won it.
So he's good, and he's the reserve driver for Aston Martin now.
And his first cards are out of the 2020
Mhm.
inaugural set.
So it's like, I feel like if you're a reserve driver and young, you still have a shot. So there's another angle besides the F2 guys. It's these reserve drivers that, because all it takes is like an injury or something, just like any sport. They hop in, they have a good race, and then other teams notice them, and then they start, the soap opera begins where they're trying to get their contract. And
Yeah.
that happened with DeVries actually last season. He filled in, I forget who he filled in for. Someone was hurt, and then he ended up getting a seat the next year.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, you know, those moments are going to be hard to predict. It's almost like it's kind of the same thing as like when Zach Wilson went down a couple years ago and Mike White came in and lit it up, and then all of Mike White's Cowboy rookie cards like 10x'd in price overnight.
Mm-hmm.
The equivalent of that, I think, would be like Drugovich, whoever has a seat ahead of him, like has a heart attack or, I mean, gets hit by a bus, and then Drugovich has to race, and then like races well for a couple races, and then like whoever was holding his cards get to sell them all and everything like that. So it's possible. It's possible to like have something like that happen, but it's like it's highly unlikely to time something like that and make that prediction. But yeah, I think like earning a seat is obviously like more significant than just like stepping in for a few races. All right,
Yeah.
so with our remaining time here, I thought maybe we could just look at we could kind of bring things home with some more Piastri data, maybe. So he was the half of I mentioned I had 3.5 guys. He was the half.
Okay.
Because like there's really nobody, like, because to me he's still a prospect. He happens to be an F1, but to me he's still a prospect where he's like the Jordan Walker or the Volpe, where you're like, okay, he's been in the big leagues, but we know he has potential, but like, so he's already had the initial call up hype, but maybe there's a resurgence of like a Jared Kalenic or whatever, where he sucks, but then he like comes back and starts hitting or whatever. And so maybe like so I guess the question is like, since he's kind of the only one, since there's only been a couple of years of this to go off of, he's kind of the only one in this scenario where it's like, he was the prospect, he got the call up. We looked at the data. Now we're in a situation where he still projects out to be an F1 driver for several more years. Mm-hmm. So the question is he who everyone thought he was? And if so, then would we not want to look at buying some of his cards now and then holding them for when he ends up maybe? I mean, we saw it happen with Leclerc a couple years ago, where Leclerc was kind of in a situation where it was like, he's going to be the breakout guy. And then he did at the beginning of last season. He didn't keep that up through the whole season, but for the first few months, he was like in the lead in the drivers' championship lead. So I mean, if you go back and look at that data, that was super significant to all of Leclerc's cards. So I'm just saying, like, in the future, if Piastri has a run like that, his cards in theory should do the same thing. So then, like, which cards would be worth buying of Piastri's? I'll tell you why. I just had that look in my face in a second. All right, so
it looked like a bird was flying above.
Why don't you take over and comment on that real quick, and then I'll chime back in.
It reminds me back to baseball. When we were comparing F1 to baseball a lot, it's like the rookie card, the rookie guy that got called up and sucked for a little bit, and then played for a year. Everyone forgot about him, had his rookie card come out, and then it's the perfect opportunity to buy a card because he's going to turn things around. Like, these are young drivers that are trying to figure things out. And I think one angle that we haven't talked about, probably because we're scared to, at least I am, is how much the cars matter. And
Mm-hmm.
like, what if all these drivers were in a Red Bull car? Then we really truly see who the better drivers are, because they all have different cars, and so we have to take McLaren as a whole. Like maybe Norris and Piastri are both good buying opportunities because McLaren's got all these improvements that are going to happen. Like that's the part of F1 that
Yeah,
uh,
that's a good point.
I'm not too familiar with. So maybe we need to have someone that's technical and knows cars and all that stuff to say, what teams are buy lows.
Yep. Yep. That's way beyond my pay grade on this. Way above my pay grade.
Because that could open up some other buying opportunities. And
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so I like that you said that. All right, so let's round out the show with just a point that I want to make, but I'll get there in a second. So when you look at, let's say we do want to buy Piastri for those reasons, right? So now we play out like what would the play be under that scenario? So if you look at the data around like some of the cards we've talked about already, so base chrome sapphire, base chrome, and base refractor. So there's there's no profit to be made from a grade and flip. So like the raw sapphire is, while it's only $6, the PSA 10 is only 34. So there's no real difference to me there. There's like, you're spending all of your money on grading fees, wishing for a 10. Whereas if you just believe in Oscar, now let's look at the base chrome. Like it's even more of an argument. Like now the upside's not going to be as high, but you would pay $5 for a raw card and you would pay, in theory, 15 for a PSA 10. And then for the refractor, in theory, you would pay $3 for the raw and 30 for the PSA 10. So I guess my point is, if you want to sort of do this with Oscar and say, I believe in him long term, I think he's going to have moments that I could sell him high, I would buy the PSA 10s of him and go hard into that if you believe that. And then I think there could, if he does have his own moments, or to Rob's point, like the car improves or he gets a seat somewhere else with a better car, all these different things, or he has like a Leclerc run of sorts, even with McLaren, it's possible. Then now you're selling for a profit. And I think like worst case scenario is that you didn't end up spending that money on the PSA, on that much money on the PSA 10 anyway. But to me, it seems kind of silly to be holding a raw card. I mean, unless you have a counter argument to that, it seems obviously an auto, like more expensive card, like that would make more sense to be holding a raw card. But I think at this, if we're talking about this level, trying to make like a semi bulk Oscar play to try to have some upside if he makes a run, I'd be looking at like really probably just the PSA 10 Sapphire edition and the PSA 10 Refractor.
Yeah, I would definitely stick to PSA. I wouldn't do the raw degrading scenario. I just don't think there's enough room there to make that happen. But so sticking to PSA 10s, and like we talked about before, the pop on all of them is, when you think about these compared to like baseball or basketball or football, the pop is tiny.
Yeah.
So whichever direction you go, if you stick to like a parallel, maybe ideally a numbered parallel, you can control the market a little bit. And I think the F1 market as a whole it's still maturing a little bit. And there was the big fad in 2020 where everyone was buying it because it was the first F1 cards. And there are a lot of people that have cards from that or 2021 and even 2022 are like, this F1 stuff is stupid. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
like, I
I'm
bought
just
all
not
this because
interested in it anymore.
I had FOMO. I bought all this and I don't want it anymore. Like, there's tons of that out there. So if you see eBay listings, make aggressive offers, and even if they don't have best offer, send them a message asking, hey, would you take whatever? And you might get lucky and get some stuff at good prices. If I think the F1's market has it's ways to go.
Yeah,
For
and I think
sure.
I agree. That's a good point. I mean, we definitely want to keep following it. We're not obviously confident enough to say like this is a play that you need to go out and make today, but we are confident enough in like the pattern recognition part of it to lay the groundwork for what you can be doing with F1 cards moving forward. I think this has been the best F1 card strategy show of all time. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not even being facetious. I think like we joked about like how hard it is with F2 prospecting, but we came in here and we were prepared with uh some data and some we broke it down. You know, we came up with some takeaways. And I think
What?
the other factor, sorry, real quick, that I'll throw out there is like to your point about it being such a young market still, is that I think there's gotta be, I don't want to say a majority because that's like total hyperbole and I don't have any data to support that, but there's got to be a ridiculous amount of hobby boxes that people are holding from 2020 and
Oh
2021
yeah.
for
More
Sapphire
2020
and
than yeah.
yeah, for sure 2020. And probably there's probably like, I think there's a mentality of, well, I missed out on 2020, so I'm going to hold a 2021 hobby box because I missed out on 2020 and that's the best I can do now. So I don't know that we've seen even the beginning of what the F1 card market really is going to be. I think we saw like the preview of the movie kind of.
Yeah.
And
And one point I just thought of as we close up is eBay is redoing their international shipping policy, and a lot of that is rolling out this summer. So I'm very curious. That's going to help the F1 market because a lot of there's more fans. The rest, just like soccer, there's a lot.
yeah.
It's more popular outside of America. So hopefully that should help with all the F1 cards that are here that we want to get to the rest of the world. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I would love for eBay and for Fanatics to solve the whole international problem of, you know, I mean, it goes beyond that, right? It's like, it's actually literally is dependent upon like customs and federal governments, like, you know, governments across the world. So it's not like eBay and Fanatics' problem to solve, but like, I do think that your point is totally legit when it comes to F1 and soccer, is that like there's arbitrage somewhere, but because of cost involved in like bringing items to different countries and shipping items to different countries, that like eliminates the arbitrage. And eBay's international shipping thing that you're mentioning is probably like the best thing that I've heard when it comes to people being able to make plays internationally. I mean, short of like buying a ridiculous amount in bulk and somehow getting it over to Europe for like a big like London card show or something. There's really not much that can be done internationally. I mean, there's even logistical problems with like Canada to the US and stuff. So, that's like, and there's a big F1 market in Canada, big soccer market in Canada. So I think like big businesses like eBay and Fanatics, they'll figure stuff out to help combat that. I know they're both like dedicated to sports cards more than anything else, pretty much.
yeah.
So, yeah, good stuff. Anything else you want to add? Anything you want to talk about going on at Bob's Card Market or the Card Treasury before we head out today?
Well, we just rolled out. I had it on the show and tell last week, but the bargain bin, you can actually see it behind me. So all these trays are cards that have sold in the bargain bin, and then the other ones are for sale. So good way to buy and sell cheap cards, cheap low end cards. If you're a seller, you can send me the cards and I do the scanning and put them on our Discord. And all cards start at $1, and we do our wonderful reverse auction, as Paul likes to call it, and lower the price to 75 cents, then 50 cents, then 25 cents, then 10 cents, all the way down to 10 cents until all the cards are sold or until the bin is over. And then if you want to buy cards, it's click a button and we add it to your stack, and you can ship your stack whenever you want, kind of like a COM-C type deal where you can let cards continue to accumulate and then save on shipping whenever you want to ship. So,
yeah, that's
feel
awesome.
good.
That's a great feature.
Yep.
Everybody check out bobscardmarket.com. Click to join the Discord. We got a lot more good stuff coming for you guys from Bob's Card Market, the Card Treasury, Rob Misora. Thanks so much for being my co-host on the F1 Card Strategy Show. Everybody, thanks so much for watching and listening. Hit us up. Email me at paul@nooffseason.com or at Sports Card Strategy on Instagram or at nooffseasoncard on Twitter. Questions, comments, feedback on the show, drop a comment below if you're on YouTube. We definitely want feedback on the whole F1 card strategy thing as we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to make plays. We don't want to leave any stone unturned when it comes to opportunities in the sports card world. So looking forward to everyone's feedback. Everybody, thanks so much. Have a great day.